Welcome to day 4 of my CRaFTi Advent series. I hope you enjoyed the annotation version of yesterday's video, but today's video is actually quite a recent one that I did. This was using lots of the expanding mousse from Nuvo that came out quite recently, and you just saw me there swiping on some Acorn brown Nuvo ink to the background just to give it a little bit of colour before I do my stenciling later. And the colours of Nuvo expanding mousse I'm using are called Misted Mauve and Mustard Seed. If you brought these on Hochanda, you actually got the Misted Mauve free. So you bought the other colours and you got the Misted Mauve free, or you got it free if you bought anything off of that show. So you might have it in your stash, and this might be a cool way of using it. Actually here, I've decanted a little bit of the Misted Mauve into a little cup, and I'm mixing in, I think it was the French wine colour, I'm pretty sure it's French wine colour, of the Nuvo Aquaflows, and I'm just squeezing some in and mixing in to try and make a slightly different colour. It's not that noticeable, especially not on my camera because it doesn't like picking up purple, but it just makes a little bit of a difference. It's very noticeable obviously when you're mixing it in with like the worn linen colour, which I've done in a few other videos. So here I'm now squishing all three of the colours, the pure misted mauve, the mixed misted mauve and the mustard seed, onto a piece of white card. This is like an A6 piece of card. I'm just squishing them on with a palette knife, and then I'm heating it with my like heat tool. So you can see the magic happening of the mousse puffing up. It does this really cool effect. Anywhere that it's really thin, if it's too thin, it's just going to dry like normal embellishment mousse, like with that pearlescent finish. If it's sort of like a millimetre or more layer, it's going to dry with a cool like flocking look, or like a faux suede kind of look. And then any areas where it's really thick, it's going to like properly puff up, like you can see on both ends of that piece of card. So now moving on to the other cards, because I'm making 3 cards in this video. So I'm using this stencil, is the Alphabet Shuffle stencil from Tonic, one of their new ones. And I've just taped both my pieces of card behind it because I thought, well, I might as well use the stencil once and only have to clean it once but get 2 cards out of it. So I'm using the same 3 colours again, the pure misted mauve, the mixed misted mauve, and then some of the mustard seed as well. I'm really enjoying that colour palette of purples and like coppery tones. It's one of like the trend families for Tonic for 2018. It's like the Arabian Nights colour scheme. I think it works really nicely, especially with that Acorn brown in the background as well. It looks really good. So I'm just scraping it on, trying to take off maybe as much of the excess as I can. It doesn't matter if you leave it a bit thicker because it's just going to puff more. And then you want to remove the stencil and go and wash that straight away. I don't think it's going to damage your stencil if it dries on it, but I just want to get in the habit of washing it off because I like having clean stencils. And then we just want to, oh yeah, before we do that, before we heat it, I'm taking some Gold Enchantment Nuvo embossing powder, which is one of their glittery ones, and I'm just sprinkling it over the expanding mousse while it's still wet. And then I'm going to heat it. So you're going to get the puffy effect, but you're also going to get little areas that have the gold powder melted into it and the glitter effect. And I'm calling this look my like encrusted expanding mousse look. I've done it quite a few times on samples using the expanding mousse. So but I really love the look of it, and I'll do it later again in the video for a border piece too. Oh, when you're heating it, it doesn't matter which heat tool you use. I've actually got a up-close video on my know-how channel, which I'll link below, giving you an up-close look at all of the colours and different techniques and how to use it and everything. But you can use either heat tool. You can use this one, which is a directional one, or you can use the like the white hairdryer looking one. Both of them work perfectly well. And you want to hold it maybe like an inch, inch and a half away from it, and you don't want to keep it in the same place for too long because I think it can burn. I have not actually burnt it, but I think it can burn, so you just want to be a little bit wary of that. And it probably makes it discolour a little bit too. When you're heating it, it does kind of lose its shine a little bit. But if you wanted to, when Paola was demonstrating this on the telly, she would take a little bit extra of the mousse and just rub it over the texture that the puffy effect has created, and then it just brings back that shine too. And here I've actually just watered down a little bit of the mustard seed, and I'm flicking it on with a paintbrush because I felt that the background needed some sort of splashes to break up like the linear scraping of the ink pad and then all of the text on it. So for the card that we just did, where we scraped the mousse onto it, I wanted to see if it would die cut. So I've taken one of Tonic's octagon layering dies, and in a second you'll see me die cut that through the machine. It does kind of squish the texture, but because you've already puffed it up, the texture's already there, so even though it's squashed, you can still see all that cool texture. And for the other two cards, I'm just picking out a mixture of Will's Hand and the sentiment strip dies to create the sentiments for those cards as well. And I'm cutting all of the main actual words from some white card, and then I'm going to cut all the bubbles out of vellum, just because I love layering up the white card on vellum for these kind of sentiments. It looks really cool. Just cleaning up a little bit. So for my die cutting, I'm using the Tonic Tangerine die cutting machine. You've probably seen in my videos, like especially the ones from the past few days, you've seen my Cuttlebug because I used to use her constantly in my videos. But I also have like the Platinum 6 from Spellbinders, and then the Tonic Tangerine too. Obviously I'm using the Tonic Tangerine because it's a Tonic video, but I do really love it. I keep reaching for it now rather than my Platinum 6, because the plate stays so straight that you have no trouble with die cutting. It doesn't matter if it's something that's really intricate or if it's just a basic shape. There's like no trouble at all die cutting it. And you can just put them all on the plate, run it through once, and everything is cut perfectly. And, you know, it's just brilliant. It takes out so much of the faff of die cutting. Sometimes you're like, oh, I really want to use this die, but it's like, especially when I have my Cuttlebug, the faff of having to cut it one way and then rotate it and cut it another way and then flip it up the other way and cut it again and then try and put a piece of paper through it. But you get none of that with the Tangerine. It's like, it's a brilliant machine. And if you've seen Jodie show it on her Chanda, you'll have seen the inside of the machine as well. Like, she often brings on brings it on without the casing, so you can see that it is pure metal inside, and you can really tell that when you lift it up because she's quite heavy. Yeah, but I love my Tangerine now. I actually called mine Clementine because go along with the Tangerine theme. Okay, we'll go back to the video now. So here I'm doing one of my favourite things to do with the mousse. I'm just using my finger to tap it onto the word dies. I'm actually sprinkling in some of that embossing powder on these ones too. But you wouldn't have thought that you could get the puffy effect on such a thin die cut. It even works on the sentiment strip ones as well. But it does. You actually get the puffy effect on a tiny little word die cut. And all I did was tap some on with my finger and sort of pat it to try and get a little peaky texture on it, so that it would definitely puff more in certain places. But it kind of looks like aged metal. It gives that sort of rustic aged metal look. I don't think I show it for that long here, but you can see the effect. And if you didn't want any of the white card showing through, you could just use the same colour card as whatever mousse you're going to use just to, you know, eliminate that possibility that you might still see some of the white card. You can see on that one where I die cut the octagon out of it, you can, well, now I've flipped it over, but you could see the squash texture on it. So I'm just adding foam tape to the back of that panel, and then I'm going to stick an extra piece of white card, and I'm going to add some Midas Touch Aqua Shimmer to this, just to give it kind of like a gold shimmery look. And I actually added that to the two sentiment strip dies, one of which I'm sticking down now, just to give it a little bit of sparkle. And it goes with the gold sparkle of the Gold Enchantment embossing powder that we've been sprinkling into the mousse as well. This is just a fine tip applicator bottle that I'm using to apply my glue. You saw me using this in day 1 of the Advent videos, and it's the same bottle. That those 2 videos were filmed about 2 years apart. So you really don't need to buy many of these bottles. You can really make them last a long time, as long as you take good care of them and don't lose the pins that come with them, because they're stainless steel. So it's very difficult to find a stainless steel pin when you're looking for one. And then you end up getting rusty glue, and then it's just, yeah. Oh, but those bottles are the woodware ones. You get a pack of 3 of them. And in my bottle at the moment, I have 3 of them with different glues in. One has my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive in, one has my Cosmic Shimmer adhesive in, and one has just like regular PVA glue. So it depends whatever project I'm doing, and I use a different type of glue for it. Here I'm just adding some white stitched detail with a white gel pen, and you can it actually draws on the mousse, which is really cool as well. And the white gel pen I use is the Uniball Signo Broad white one. I just get mine off of Amazon. I'm pretty sure I've seen them for sale in Ryman's as well, but it just depends, you know, where you live and everything. So here I'm just cutting down my card blanks. I was actually using square ones at this point because I ran out of my A6 ones. But you know, the great thing about buying square card blanks, they were really cheap in Hobbycraft. They were like £2.50 for a packet rather than £5. Anyway, but with the square ones, you can actually cut a top folding or a side folding A6 card blank out of them, which is really interesting to know. Well, I don't actually know if A6 actually comes out of it, but my size of card, which is usually like 10.5 by 13.5 centimetres. And I'm also cutting an extra piece of card here. I was thinking of doing this border on that love card. However, I ended up changing it to a different card once I'd done it, because I thought it looked better. And I actually still have that card on my shelf. Isn't that funny that lots of these videos that I'm redoing the footage of for this Advent series, they're all ones that I've actually still got on my shelf. It's funny how sometimes you just can't part with a card because you're like, I really love the way that turned out, and I want to remember that inspiration and like the happiness you felt when you made that card, so that you can make some more like it in the future. Although, saying that, that butterfly card has been sitting on my shelf for 2 years, from day 1 of this series, and I don't think I've made another one that looks that much like it. I've used the same kind of technique, but anyway. Yeah, so this is the same thing as we were doing earlier, where I just squished on some of the different colours of the mousse, and then sprinkled in a little bit of that embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat it up. It doesn't matter how messy this is, as long as it's covering the portion of card that's going to stick out from around your main panel that's going to be stuck over the top of it. It doesn't matter how messy the interior edge is, because you're not going to see it. Yeah, actually, while I'm doing this, I have done this a couple of times, and so here I've been using that gold enchantment embossing powder, but you can also, you could just sprinkle in some Nuvo glitter, you know, just the usual ones, either the like original series of Nuvo glitter that came in the big tubs with a giant gem on top, or the newer versions that you get like a set of 4 in different colours. You can use that glitter, or you can use the Nuvo Sparkle Dust as well, which is really, really fine. The name Dust is really really accurate description of that glitter, but that glitter works really well too. And you know, you just sprinkle it in, maybe leave it for when you're using glitter, maybe leave it for like 5 or 10 minutes, just so that the expanding mousse kind of like starts to dry around it a little bit, just so it holds the glitter in place and it doesn't just blow off when you go to heat it up. So I've decided I want to add that Believe Inspire card to this one, and so I don't squash the mousse that's on that front panel, I added the foam tape to the interior of the frame we just made, and then stuck the panel to that because it just makes it easier. you can see here, I said in another video that I often like to use tape and wet glue to stick my cards together. So for that previous card I'd used like a tape runner and then some extra glue. This one's using foam tape and a bit of extra glue. Here's the tape runner again and extra glue, because these are a bit heavier as well, so I wanted to make sure that they're definitely going to stick on all four corners. Oh, and then my final touches for these cards were some Nuvo vintage drops, because the vintage drops and the expanding mousses were both launching in the same show on Hochanda, and these samples were for that. I think I used the brownie colour that you were seeing me fiddle with. That's called Saddlebag, and then I think I used the brown actually, which is called Chocolate Chip. So I'll try and remember to link them below as well. And obviously I like to pre-make my Nuvo drops. I just use like the backing sheet off some double-sided adhesive sheet and leave them to dry for a couple of days. And I actually keep them in separate pots as well. That was just, I'd just made them, that's why they were still on the sheet. So I hope you enjoyed this video showing you 3 cards, all using the same colour palette but a couple of different ways of using the Nuvo expanding mousse. So thanks for watching day 4 of this CRaFTi Advent series, and I hope you enjoy tomorrow's video. Bye!